What's going on? Boys, today we're talking about a few things. It had been probably 2 years since I'd seen The Matrix last, but I remembered liking Morpheus more than I remembered the last time I watched it. And The Matrix is interesting because it captures reality perfectly from a few different points of view. Now, I watched it earlier, and I'm back to identifying with Neo, but I'm still very interested in Morpheus. Right? Because Morpheus isn't deluding himself. He's the one who wakes people up from delusions. He has a sober yet clear outlook on reality. Yet, he is still trying to save everyone. And that got me thinking about saints. I think a saint is someone who recognizes what people are, recognizes they are not worth saving, yet tries to save them anyway. Or, put better, a saint is willing to sacrifice themselves to save people, knowing they aren't worth saving. I think that's one of the reasons the crucifixion, however you interpret it, is so important as a symbol. Christ is taking a world-class beating to save the people who are giving him that world-class beating. Christ knows these people are not worth saving, but he saves them anyway, or tries to, or gives them the opportunity to save themselves. And I think there are people out there like this. That ESFP encounter I had last year comes to mind. Now, I don't think that dude was a full-fledged saint, but he was on the right path. And I know this because he was not speaking to me or trying to convince me of illusions. And rare is a conversation like that. Someone who is accepting reality and human beings as the worst and still trying to save them. I recognize these people would burn me alive if they had the opportunity, but I am still trying to do good by them. And this is key because, as Saint O'Neill would say, I wouldn't take a hard pinch for this entire human race. And that's about how I feel. There are very few individuals I would sacrifice my life for, and even if I were to sacrifice myself to save them or to give them an opportunity or something, I would die with no confidence it would be worth anything. That sacrifice would be just a decision, not an act of goodwill or hope or something. You can do a million good deeds without it meaning anything. You can sacrifice yourself without it meaning anything. That sort of saintliness we're talking about is recognizing that these people aren't worth saving, and then sacrificing yourself for them. Right, and I separate good deeds from sacrifice, and I separate sacrifice from this sort of saintly sacrifice. Knowing people are undeserving and giving yourself for them anyway. That's why I'm saying pray for your saints. I think there are a few of them out there, and they are helping you, would die for you, even though you don't deserve it on any level. And we talk about Hylics, psychics, and pneumatics. I think people are built for different paths. Because you take that ESFP dude and I, for instance. We both see and accept the same facts about reality and people. We're standing in the same spot, looking at the same things, and recognize we're in the same spot, looking at the same things. yet our essential reactions are totally different. Not only do I think people generally, Hylics, psychics too, actually, there are bad, or I say bad, psychics I don't like, there are psychics I don't like. People generally don't deserve sacrifice, but also they shouldn't be allowed even to receive sacrifice. Like, you look at people, certain people, saints, and you say, they are too good for this world. And you're right. They are too good for this world. They shouldn't be allowed to give themselves for a species this rotten. Now, you're never going to see me trying to block a saintly sacrifice like this, because what happens afterward cements my point of view. No good deed goes unpunished. And once you watch people get ripped apart for trying to do the right thing, you feel more secure in your position, which is turn me into an Archon and let me at him for a few thousand years. But none of this is to say actual saints are bad or stupid. The complete opposite, in fact. Their sacrifices exist to demonstrate just how unworthy of saving and deserving of punishment humanity is. I mean, I'm not a Christian, but how do you have this vital a sacrifice not only at the center of your religion, but frankly at the center of modern thinking, because Christianity has influenced the entire world at this point. Even if you deny Christianity, Christian thinking is in your head. And just waste it every day. Pray for your saints. They see you for the rotten, evil thing you are, and still want to save you. But now, using the Matrix, let's get into some psychic talk. The movie just keeps getting better as time goes on, and you find the meaning or the value in some things you maybe didn't before. For instance, the quote, "Don't think you are, know you are." What have we been talking about for the last few weeks? The difference between comprehending something logically and understanding it essentially. And we've even mentioned the idea maybe you have encountered the truth before, but didn't have the capacity to understand it. Maybe didn't even have the capacity to recognize it as something that could be or should be understood. But what does that difference in degrees of understanding get you? Well, in the Matrix context, the Resistance people recognize the Matrix is the Matrix. They are in a reality that isn't real. They can see it. It's undeniable. That's one level. And then there is understanding it, not just recognizing it on one level. That's how they are running across walls, doing backflips, fighting 3 people at one time. They recognize reality is fake, and on their level of understanding, they can bend the rules a little bit. That's what their degree of understanding affords them. But then you have Neo toward the end of the movie, going beyond recognition and understanding on one level to understanding in full, internalizing, accepting none of this is real. Your mind makes it real. It's real because you think it's real, meaning your belief in the illusion, even if you recognize it as an illusion, is still limiting you, because you haven't fully embraced that it is an illusion. Once you fully understand it on that Neo level, then you have no limits. One of the other absolutely fire lines. So you're saying I can dodge bullets. No, Neo. I'm saying once you're ready, you won't have to. If you think you can dodge bullets, then you can dodge bullets. But if you think you have to dodge bullets, then you're still creating more control for the illusion than it actually has. Degrees of understanding something and the powers that come with those elevating degrees. I'm at a point I recognize and, to a small degree, understand that I can develop skills and take actions to secure results, sometimes outside the norm, outside maybe what is programmed to happen. But I think it's possible to reach a level of understanding. You can just make things happen using consciousness. For instance, where I'm standing, I see the path to becoming a millionaire. With the correct application of actions and knowledge, that's feasible, when it probably shouldn't be. But if someone achieved Chim, if someone became the one, if someone became him, realized he was him, you wouldn't even need to develop the skills or take the actions. It would just be there. I'm beginning to believe. And another thing, I love that Neo rejects his, quotes, real name, his Matrix name. I'm not Mr. Anderson, I'm Neo. Like, I've done a few YouTube collaborations in which people don't want to call me Skimmerlit or mock me for going by Skimmerlit. They want to go by real names. And that always confused me and annoyed me too, but I didn't quite have the words to explain why back then. It's because your alias is the identity, the name, the signifier you have created. Do you want, are you such a slave you want to go by the name you were given, that was assigned to you? Why don't you want to go by the representation of all your conscious work? I want to reach a level of consciousness I can walk around the streets doing that. I think there's psionic value in calling yourself by what you want and looking the way you feel, and being able to do it in a way that works. Reality bends itself around you, not because it's allowing you to do it, but because you are so psionically dense, psychically dense. Reality must bend around you. And I want to talk a bit about Frieren, because what we're talking about right now is a huge element of that story, but at the same time, I feel like you would miss it if you weren't watching for it. The same way I've missed tons of things about The Matrix over the years because I wasn't looking at it the right way. Once again, I wasn't even recognizing that there was something here to try to understand to a higher level. But before we get into Frieren, there's one more thing I wanted to mention about The Matrix in relation to Hylex. Remember what we were talking about a while ago? The idea these soulless people, Hylex, have no souls specifically so demons, the demiurge, archons can express their will through them. They aren't people, they are animated, or they are an animated medium. I think it's interesting or important here that the agents can hijack people's bodies. the Unenlightened's bodies, Hylics bodies. If you're choosing not to throw yourself down the rabbit hole, not to awaken, or not to elevate yourself, whatever you want to call it, then don't be surprised when you're used as a vessel for higher powers. Or rather, don't act shocked when you get used. Okay, Frieren. I. Oh boy, I would really like to make a full video on Frieren, and we might. But for right now, in Frieren, using magic requires the ability to visualize that magic being used. If you can't see yourself casting it, then you'll never cast it. Even if you can, even if you have the capacity to. That's what makes Ubel so interesting and so dangerous. She is so attuned to visualizing herself cutting things in a particular way. If, in her mind, it is something that can be cut, then she can cut it, even if she really should not be able to cut it. But if it's something like stone, it's not something that scissors can cut, so she can't cut it, even though she clearly has the ability to. It's all in visualization. Ubel has totally mastered cutting things she thinks she can cut. On that level that is beyond thinking, beyond visualizing even. You don't think you can, you know you can. And I want to mention there is a difference between saying you know you can and knowing you know you can. You can know to different levels. It's hard to explain because it's a contradiction. It's not verbal. And that's something they talk about in the Frieren manga. It is intuitive. You know to what level you know something, and you know you can know better even if you know you don't currently know better. And this is one of the reasons the two primary elves in Frieren are interesting to me. Frieren and Ciri. I like them as contrasted representations of different things. Like, Flam considers Frieren the mage of a more peaceful age. What does that make Ciri, or imply Ciri is? It implies Ciri is the mage of a war age. And it's interesting because superficially, Frieren and Ciri look similar. They are both elven mages who are aloof and detached. There's another word, a better word, but I don't know it. Disaffected sounds like the word I'm thinking of, but that isn't it. And I wanted to mention, I think... So, neurodivergent has become... I mean, it is what it's supposed to be. The word is what it sounds like. It's supposed to mean non-neurotypical. But these days, when people say neurodivergent, they mean either autistic or mentally ill. And that isn't exactly it. For instance, I think Frieren as a character is an exploration of a non-neurotypical woman, but maybe not necessarily a neurodivergent woman. At least in the way neurodivergent gets used popularly. If you're going by definition, then yes, that is exactly what Frieren is. And I think Ciri is too, but the reason I'm talking about this here is I think you can be non-neurotypical without being neurodivergent by popular definition. Your brain can be chugging along in an atypical way without your being miscategorized as autistic. Anywho, levels of consciousness, levels of visualization. I think Frieren is a psychic. But she's interesting because she's built up a shield emotionally outward facing. Frieren is a detached, non neurotypical elf, but she uses this persona. It's true, but it is also a persona to protect herself inside emotionally from a cruel, nasty world. As in, I think if we see Frieren's shield drop one time. I think if you were to see Frieren's shield drop fully for a longer period of time, you would see 37 flavors of sobbing. Frieren is a cold blooded killer when it comes to demons, but I don't think she wants to be. The fact that she respects Mock's desire for coexistence, an earnest desire for coexistence that she recognizes and respects him for, demonstrates the fact she would rather not be this way. And the fact, God, I can't remember her name. Is it Sartori? Something like that? The fact she was able to get under Frieren's skin by scratching the open wound that Frieren's mind and emotions don't work the way most people's do says something. I think it's one of the reasons Frieren isn't as powerful as she could be. Frieren is not a first class mage, and Frieren herself recognizes Ciri's judgments are always correct. But then you take a look at Ciri, who again, superficially, very similar to Frieren. Old, powerful, detached elf. And like Frieren, that is what she is, but it is also a shield, but unlike Frieren, Ciri's shield seems to be inward facing. The few times you see Ciri's shield drop, she's unsettling. She's not crying or breaking down like Frieren does. She's another species. Ciri is her. And I think it's no mistake in this manga, the central goddess figure people pray to is not some abstract thing. You see statues of this goddess a few times. She's an elf, or was an elf, which leads me to believe this goddess wasn't actually a goddess, she was just a very powerful mage, a la Ciri, a la Frieren. Which again makes lining up Frieren and Ciri together and contrasting them all the more fertile for analysis. Compared to most people, Frieren is her because she's powerful. But compared to Ciri, Frieren is not even close to being her because she isn't visualizing herself that way. Again, when Ciri's shield drops, you're looking at a careful, Old Testament ass god of war. Frieren, in terms of visualization, is still on the level of trying to protect herself and others from a nasty world. Ciri is so far gone, or so far above, however you want to look at it, she needs to protect reality from herself. And I think that's because Frieren is a saint. She wants to be emotionally with or of humanity, despite recognizing how stupid and short sighted and not worth being of or being saved they are. It's almost like she's upset with her own potential. In our terms, it's like she recognizes that she is a psychic and she is using her abilities for good, but she would rather not be. It's hard to explain, but Faulkner, the Wild Palms, and oh god, is it The Old Man? Something like that? Originally written as two separate novels, then jammed together intentionally by Faulkner. They are totally unrelated, written without each other in mind, in fact. But Faulkner found something valuable in sticking them together to contrast them. Two separate stories, chapter by chapter. What are we supposed to gain or learn in contrasting these two separate things in this way? Frieren and Ciri. Frieren, psychic who doesn't really like being a psychic, or maybe even would rather psychics didn't exist, didn't need to exist. Versus Ciri, someone I would almost consider, probably should consider, a pneumatic, someone who is good. I can't think of anything, any bad or evil actions Ciri has taken, which is odd, because she is so unsettling. Someone who would be considered a god if she weren't hiding it so carefully. Which keeps her interesting, by the way, because we don't know what her angle is. Like Frieren, Ciri plays it like she doesn't actually have a larger goal in mind. But she's lying. So if she is super powerful, lying pretty consistently, but consistently takes good or thank Christ she's on our side actions, then what's her deal? What is she trying to accomplish? And I bring all this up not only because this manga is fire, even though this manga is fire, but also maybe to think beyond the capabilities of psychic ascension, which is what Ciri is, and to look at a psychic, an ascended psychic, or even a pneumatic, in relation to normal people. Because becoming is one thing. It's something you feel and use. But seeing becoming in another is something else entirely. And that's another value found in contrasting Frieren and Ciri. Frieren is the psychic trying to become more connected with people. Ciri is the psychic, or perhaps pneumatic, you're terrified every second of every day is going to become a villain. Because again, Ciri has done nothing but good. But she is so powerful and alien when the mask slips, it's unnerving. And I think the entire manga is a reflection on power and non-neurotypicalness in relation to the average person. I mean, thinking about it, the demons in Frieren are actual archons, some of them. And emotionally, the demons and the elves, or at least our two primary elves, are not that different. They're both detached. And that's shit, that's exactly what it is. What's unnerving about Ciri is she seems to be as detached from humanity as the demons are. The only difference is she is, for some reason, operating as a good person, or operating on the side of good, rather. Versus Frieren, who is almost as detached from humanity as the demons are, and she really doesn't like that about herself, and is working to change it. But we're we've been dragging this out. Pray for your saints. None of us deserve them. But that about rippity wraps this one up. I hope you enjoyed watching, because I certainly enjoyed making it. I'm glad I made this video, but this one is messy in not the way I like. But that's okay. We're good. Like if you enjoyed, because it helps me out a lot. Subscribe if you haven't, because we do this shit sometimes in comments, thoughts, love hearing from you. What do you like about the Frieren manga? I'm kind of obsessed with it. and am looking for excuses to talk about it. I don't understand it to the level I think there are things to be understood in there yet. Thanks again for watching, Rudy. Really be a lot of fun on this channel. So much fun. In fact, you can visualize it and make it real. And that's a lot of fun. And that's how much fun on this channel. And I look forward to doing this with you guys again in the future.